it is very good. And the gameplay, sound, graphics, everything in it is very well done and polished. So that is where I would probably say that the only thing that I would like to see in the game, really, because everything else in the game I'm very happy with, the only thing So, on today's Indie Sunday is Black Skyland. I'll go ahead and say that I did actually play the game prior to this once before, but that was back when the game was still in its early concept. It was still being developed. It wasn't just early access. Like, I was a part of some of the very first playtests of the game way back when. So it's been a game that I have supported and have had for years now, and it is now a finished game. That's why I decided to come back and play it this time, is because it's actually finished. They haven't really touched it. The developers are now going on to their next game that they're building. It is actually kind of fun coming back to see the changes that they've done with this game. Definitely improvements, I will say that. It's definitely a improvement. We got 8 different points to go over on the review, so let's just start off with point number 1, which is the team. So some of the other ones we've been doing, the developers have been the developer and publishers. This one has twofer, the developers and a separate publisher. The developers, who we'll talk about, is Hungry Couch Games. This is their very first game that they've ever built, and they have a support pack so you can help support the game as well, and they've also got a couple other bundles, but this is their very first game that they've ever made. Very small team, but a very good team. I have been a part of their Discord. I've talked with them a little bit. They have been very, very forthcoming, and they always talk with their community. They did very well on the game aspect and the community building aspect. So they did very well across the board there. They listened to their community very well. And they do now have their second game ever that they are announcing, which is Drill Core. I have not looked into it, but it is the next project that they have announced that they are working on. The publisher is Tiny Build, and you might actually remember Tiny Build from a multitude of other games. Probably the more prominent one that you have heard about is Hello Neighbor. Tiny Build is the publisher behind the Hello Neighbor franchise, as well as multiple other ones, such as Kill It With Fire, Sand, Broken Roads, Kingmakers, Trail Valley World, and a multitude of other games. The publishers have several small indie games under their belt. They work with multiple different studios, which is awesome. And a lot of the games are fun little games you can play with and whatnot. They don't have a lot, but it's definitely good. Those are the 2 teams that we have behind the building of this game. So the game state. So at the time of this review, the game is in its finished state. It is a finished game. It was officially released in August of 2023, and that's when the actual 1.0 version of the game dropped. Again, I played the game for quite some time beforehand. A lot of the similar content, but they've also changed some content since then, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the game is honestly not very big. You don't need a very strong system to play this game. It's very minimalistic, which is nice. That's definitely a plus, where it's very well built. Even from day one, it was very polished for the most part for what they had in the game. So they did very well on the development side of that. Great twin stick shooter, I will definitely say that. Now, the game itself, Black Skylands, is that you become the captain of an airship and explore the world of the skies. You gather resources and build powerful weapons, and you uncover ancient secrets and fight beneath your ship's sails. So there's a multitude of different things you fight, different types of upgrades and things you can do, which we'll cover in the gameplay aspect, but there is quite a bit to the game, and it is really, really cool. So that's kind of covering up point 2, where the game state, it's finished. It's out of early access. It is done. I think they've only ever brought out 1 patch. Yeah, they did a quick bug patch and performance improvement after the 1.0 release. But after that, they haven't really touched it or anything, which is perfectly fine. The game does very, very well. It's good. The graphics for this game, it is a 8-bit styled game. So if you enjoy those 8-bit styled games, this definitely does that. But it is 2D, where you're at a top-down view of everything happening, but it's all 2D and whatnot. But they do very well with the graphics on making certain things look even 3D. When you walk by a tree, you can actually see that it has like a shape, so it actually has the movement when it goes by you and everything, but it's from that bird's eye view, so that top down point of view. So that's kind of a unique thing that I like. It is very well done in that aspect where it looks really nice and everything, but it's still just a top down, technically 2D, but just in a different perspective, which is pretty cool because everything just moves on that plane. That's how everything moves on that level. That is what the graphics are, and I dare say for a game like this, it works very well with it being a bullet sponge type game. Very pixelated graphics and whatnot, but very nice. I really like how it's done for this kind of game. Cartoony, cute, but also chaotic, and again, like that really cool kind of looking cartoon look when like an explosion goes off and such. Now the gameplay, this is probably going to be the biggest thing that we got for the review. The gameplay itself, I'm going to try to stay away from comparing too much to what it used to be, at least not going too in depth from what I can remember, but the gameplay itself is actually very well done. It's got a really nice progression system where you slowly just unlock more things. When it comes to your weapons as well as your ship tech and everything, there is an upgrade system, but also there's a modifying system where you can take each of your weapons that you find for your person, your firearms and such, and you can modify different attachments for them, which change how the weapons operate. But then you can also just upgrade the weapons themselves directly, just increase their stats overall and such, which is primarily just the damage, as well as a few other ones. Similar with the ship, you can swap out ship loadouts. You have different types of ships as well as different types of weapons you can get, and you can swap them out and upgrade them. You can't really modify the ship weapons. It's just an upgrading system for those, but it's a really good progression system. You can create more buildings or repair and upgrade buildings on your main fathership, so that way you can unlock more potential things. They also added in some extra stuff since the last time I played. When it came to that, they did add in a couple new characters that introduced new types of tech and abilities for your character that were not in the game in the early concept days. So that is really nice to see how they added that in as well. So your abilities also, you can swap out your abilities and upgrade them as well, which is really nice to see. They did not have that before, so it's really nice to see that. But the way the gameplay works, it does very well with a seamless transfer between going on foot and being on your ship. And there's two forms of combat. So you have the bullet hell type aspect and everything, which is the on foot combat, where you walk around, you grapple from platform to platform, rock to rock, or whatever it may be, firing at your enemies and such, and then dodging and stuff like that as well. You got your dodge, you got your melee and such as well. You got health kits that you can upgrade and so on and so forth. So it can be very bullet hell-esque when you're doing that aspect of the game. So it's a lot of fun in that regards. But then when you're on your ship, it's a much different aspect, a lot more strategic. You got to pick the types of weapons you want to use for distance. You're in a flying airship and you're treating it. You have your main weapon that you can use, like a gimbal at the front of your ship that you can use indefinitely. You just got to worry about cooldown. But then you have ammunition used weapons mounted on either side of your ship, which you can fire off and everything. The way that used to be different, it's the same now where you have your gimbal weapon on the front and then you have your side weapons, your ammunition ones on either side. It used to be you could actually change which weapon was on either side. So you had your front weapon, your right weapon, and your left weapon. You could actually swap them out to have completely different ones. So you could have like a barrage on the right, but you could have like a rocket on the left or something like that. Now it is just straight across the board, it seems, unless certain airships are allowed to do that, but I haven't seen anything that does that yet. So that is still undetermined at the moment, but it used to be that way for all ships, but that's neither here nor there now. So that's the fun aspect with the gameplay. The other aspects of the gameplay with like the puzzles and such, they didn't have those puzzles in before. Those are newly added, or at least since the last time I played, they weren't in the game. And I'm very pleased that they actually added in some fun puzzles that you have to figure out. And you get extra rewards for completing those, which is a lot of fun. So the gameplay is very fun and intuitive, and the controls and everything, it's all very well thought out, and it's very, very smooth. So I like it. The sound design, very well done. It is dialogue heavy when it comes to the story aspect. There's no voice acting or anything like that, and that's understandable for an indie game. You can't really afford to pay somebody that kind of money. It's easy to make a game and easy to make sound effects. Paying somebody, or if you're actually trying to get professional voice acting for certain things, can take quite a bit. So that can definitely eat up a lot of money in production for these kind of things. But it's very well done when the sound effects and everything, from weapons, combat, and everything else, monsters, enemies, all that kind of stuff. The sound design and music also is very well done in the game. Very epic, but also calming at the same time. I very much enjoy all the different aspects when it comes to the music and sound effects in the game. So it's done very, very well. Very good quality. Next up is the controls. As I said just a little bit ago, I'll get into a little bit more here with the controls. They are very intuitive. I have played the game on mouse and keyboard as well as controller, and it does change up a little bit depending on how you play, actually. I will say you can get much quicker responses on firing or at least shooting at things. It just felt a little bit nicer on the mouse and keyboard. But I will also say you have a lot more movement control when it comes to the controller, especially in the ship aspect when you're flying your ship, because with mouse and keyboard you can't control your speed. You're either moving or you're stopping. That's it. With controller, you can actually set the speed you want and your ship will keep that speed. So then your ship can keep going and you can actually step away from the helm and do things around the ship if you want. With mouse and keyboard, you can't do that. When you get off the helm, the ship comes to an automatic stop. So that is one thing, and I did not find any controls or any way that you could potentially turn that off. So that is how the mouse and keyboard works compared to the controller. So that's a little bit interesting. So there's kind of like a mild pro con there, depending on how you look at it. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. But I definitely enjoy the controls either way. I did play majority of it with my controller, and I think I'm kind of hooked on using the controller for it, but that's just me. So, but it feels very intuitive either way. The controls and everything that they had set up for it, the bindings and the way the controller schematics and everything, the way how they had it set up is very well done, and I like it. So now on to point number 7, the story and the lore. I will say it is very good. They have always had a story in the game since back, like when they first dropped the game, you could play it. There was a plot from day one, but they did heavily change it since the last time I played. The story used to be a bit different. You were just living here, you were attacked, and there's like a misunderstanding kind of a thing, and you're fighting this pirate faction kind of a thing. There was a conflict between your faction and the pirates, essentially, and that's all it was. But now it is drastically different, and I like it. Like, I really, really like it. Before, it's not like it's a bad thing, but it just felt like, again, it kind of felt a little dull. It was just like a simple thing, like, okay, you're floating on your ships and everything, you're this faction, you have this enemy faction, you're butting heads. That was pretty much it. They did have a lot of the same characters and baddies and people that you talked with and everything NPC wise. They did add in like actual boss fights, a couple extra characters like the Crash, the lieutenant that we fought. He wasn't in the game when I first played, nor was his boss fight per se. It was just Kane and you just fought his underlings and that was it. But now there's actually like, honest to goodness, like really good boss fights in the game when it comes into that aspect where you're fighting like other characters and whatnot, his lieutenants and such. But now there's even like more mystery into the thing too. They're actually doing some more stuff with the main character's mother, who is from like a very barbaric land that wasn't in the main game. In the main game, you were just in your place. There was no empire, there was no desert region or anything like that. It was just you fighting the other faction, which is the Falcons, which now the Falcons are a pirate faction, which you're still fighting, but now they're a little bit of a different faction. I feel like that fits their characters a little bit more too. But now we're also hearing stuff about there being multiple other areas and multiple other factions that is in the universe. And it's definitely bringing up a lot of interesting things. So I'm still very curious about what the heck was in that cage or that crate that came to our father at the beginning of the game in the prologue, and the reason why we had to leave so soon. That was very interesting. I'm actually intrigued by this story. Like, I am actually very curious about what's going to happen. So I'm actually say maybe we'll make this our new Wednesday game in place of Remnant 2, because there's a bit of a story here that I would definitely like to continue on. Like, I'm intrigued by this, like the whole mystery about the mother, the father, different factions, and even now the monsters and stuff like that too. I'm actually very intrigued by that. So we'll give this a shot for the next couple Wednesdays. We'll keep playing this and see just how much farther we can get through the game, essentially. But yeah, the story and the lore, it's also done very well. There's very good storytelling done here. And it's a good mix of like heavy narrative gameplay as well as cinematics and such. It does pretty well on both of those. There's the cinematic aspect, but it's all dialogue and such reading. But there's also a little bit of a story or the lore that you can discover by exploring the world, which is also pretty nice to see too. So I definitely am looking forward to the story. Now, the replay value, which is our final point, I don't really have too much to say on that. I would say definitely if you're an enjoyer of this style of game, open world sandbox kind of a game, pixelated one, such where you're running around doing all sorts of stuff, as I've mentioned in all the previous points. If that is something that would be enjoyable to somebody, then it's definitely a good game. The replay value, I don't know how long the game is per se. It definitely feels like the game is meant to be played in the long run, where you have a long session. But it's also nice that they have multiple save slots, where you can easily sit down and have multiple character playthroughs, either for yourself or for you and your friends, which is also pretty nice. At least when it comes to the mechanics, there is kind of like a replayability to the mechanics where you keep going to islands, you have to liberate them essentially, and continuing on that path, so to speak. And if I remember right, if they kept this in the game, the islands can be stolen back. So there is kind of a aspect where you can go back and you have to re-liberate islands. That was a mechanic. I don't know if that is a mechanic right now. So we will find that out later. I'm enjoying the fact that I'm going back to this game after being gone from it for several years now, and I'm actually enjoying it very much. And there's a lot more in the game now. But then just, I could see that playing through this game, it is definitely built to be more of a, you have one big playthrough of the game that you're doing, or one big save essentially, but then you can go back and do different things as well. So you do have that at your disposal as well. Play value is pretty good. I definitely wouldn't say it's a game built around needing the replayability or anything, or coming back to the game once you've actually completed it. I'm not, it's feeling more like it's one of those linear type games where it's like, okay, you make the game, you get in the game, you make your character, you play, you get your save, you play through it all and everything, you do as much as you can. But then at that point, it then becomes more of a grinding aspect where you just keep doing some of the same activities over and over again to keep farming and keeping the gameplay going. It's kind of got its development points where it progresses along in like story progress as well as character progression. But then there's also the there's small sections here and there where you're just grinding out things essentially. So, which isn't very bad at all. Honestly, I think it's done very well. It's fun. I would say as the game stands right now, with it being a finished game, like it is 1.0 done, they are onwards to the next game and everything. It's very well polished. The state and everything is very good. Graphics very good. Gameplay, controls, sound. It's all extremely well done and whatnot. I would still probably say just like things that I would personally like to see in a game like this. I'm always a big fan of games when they have some voice acting. I don't mind dialogue, and the way that the game is built, it can do without it, but I love to kind of hear how characters would be reacting and such when there's a voice to the character, when there's reactions and such. So that is where I would probably say that the only thing that I would like to see in the game, really, because everything else in the game I'm very happy with, the only thing is maybe just a little bit of voice acting. It doesn't even have to be in like all the dialogue options, maybe just like in a cutscene or in like the pre-rendered cutscenes and everything where the characters are talking to each other. At least just having those where it's like, okay, this is where the dialogue is going to happen, have lines recorded there for those characters at that time. But then all the other times when they're running around and you're just bumping into a bunch of other characters and such, or NPCs chit-chatting and whatnot, you just have the dialogue and you can read it. So it is kind of a two-sided coin though, because I can also understand where when you don't have the dialogue, you can leave a lot of the imagination on what a character's voice is going to sound like. But I would say that I would have liked to see a little bit of voice acting to at least a small degree, just in like the rendered cutscenes where people talk to each other, like in the pivotal story moments. So with all that said and all that in mind, I'd honestly give the game, for what it is designed to be and seeing the development behind it, for what it is trying to be, it is achieving that. It is done very well for what it is. I feel like everything that they have built into the game is great for what it is. It's not overloading, but it's also not too minimalistic. I'm going to give the game a 9 out of 10. Like, I'm going to give the game a 9 out of 10. It has a really good story behind it, memorable characters, and the gameplay sound, graphics, everything in it is very well done and polished and is perfect for what this game is. So a 9 out of 10 for me, honestly. It's really, really good. The only thing that would probably bring it up to like a 9.5 or even a 10 would be the voice acting aspect. I feel like for this kind of a game, if it could just have that extra little bit of, I wouldn't even really say quality, but that just a little bit of extra something thrown into that, it would definitely bring it up to a 9.5 or a 10. And that's the thing. It's still a 9 to me. It's still really good. So a 9 out of 10 iron bars is what it's getting from me. And yeah, I'll definitely recommend if it's a game that people would like to play. Again, it's very minimalistic when it comes to the things you need to play it. It's a very, like, I'm pretty sure you could play this thing on a nice tablet if they ever decided to do that. Like, I could see you could play this on like a iPad or something. There is a lot of control stuff to it, so I don't know if that would ever happen, but just saying, it looks very good, and it would be very easy to play on a system, so you don't need an outstanding computer system to play it. So yeah, there you go. That concludes my review of Black Skylands, which we'll be returning to every Wednesday for the time being.